Over to Justice Markanday Karti.
Yes, sir. So before study starts, just a little housekeeping before we get started.
Okay.
If any participants have any questions during the webinar, please type into the chat box in your Zoom app. I will bring them during the webinar, and we will have a question and answer session at the end of this webinar. Now, without further ado, we will turn the time over to our guest, Honorable Justice Markanday Karti, sir. Sir, over to you, sir.
See, as you all know, in our constitution, there is a chapter on fundamental rights in part 3. You all know it very well. Now, this was not there in the earlier constitution, which was the Government of India Act 1935. There was no fundamental rights in the Government of India Act 1935. It was something new in the constitution made on 26 January 1950. And it was made because our founding fathers were themselves freedom fighters, many of whom had suffered for long years in jail because they were fighting against British rule, and the Britishers put them in jail. And they had seen the liberties of the Indian citizens trampled upon by the British rulers. So they determined that when India becomes free, that same thing will not happen again, and people of India will have basic liberties. So they incorporated this chapter on fundamental rights, borrowing largely from the US Bill of Rights in the US Constitution. Now, within a few months of the promulgation of the Constitution on 26 January 1950, a constitution bench of the Supreme Court gave a very important judgment called Ramesh Thapar versus State of Madras, in which the Supreme Court said that in a democracy, people have the right to criticize the government. You see, what else is democracy? Democracy means that the people are supreme and people are real rulers. So, since people are the masters and the state authorities are subordinate to the people, therefore the master has the right to criticize his servant. This was unlike in feudal times where the king was supreme and the people were the subordinates of the king. And therefore people had no right to criticize the king. But in a democracy, this relationship is reversed. Now the people who were earlier subordinate to the king in feudal times, they become supreme, and the state authorities all become servants of the people and subordinate to the people. Whether you are President of India, Prime Minister of India, Chief Justice of India, all of you are nothing but servants of the people. And just as a master has a right to criticize his servant, if you have a servant in your house, if he does something wrong, you can surely criticize him. So also people have the right to criticize the state authorities. And that was held in Ramesh Thapar's judgment. You see, because no doubt a fundamental right chapter was added in the Constitution, but it will remain only on paper unless somebody protects and upholds those rights. And it was for the judiciary to protect those rights and act as the guardians of the rights of the people against excesses and arbitrary action and illegalities of the executive authorities. There must be somebody who will protect those rights, otherwise they are just an ornamentation, just a flower pot, meaningless. Therefore, it was the judiciary which was made the guardians of the rights of the people and custodians of the Constitution. I've mentioned all this in that article I sent to you, which was published in the website, thewire.in, called The Supreme Court Must Resume Its Role as Protectors of the Rights of the People. So, in that article, I mentioned that in recent years, very often the people have been deprived of their liberties, and yet the judiciary is doing nothing. Hello, can you see me? Hello?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We can see you, sir. There is no issue.
It was held by the Constitution Bench of Supreme Court in 2018. Navtej Singh Johar versus Union of India, and this some Shakti Bahani versus Union of India. That if there is a right, then the court cannot remain a mute spectator. The court must uphold those rights. There is nobody else except the court which can uphold those rights. But what we are witnessing in recent years, that the court is failing in its duty to uphold the rights of the citizens. Can you see me? Hello?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We can see you, sir.
In recent time, for example, before I give example, I may mention of a recent judgment of Madras High Court by Justice Kuddose in the case of N. Ram versus Union of India, where Justice Kuddose has said that people have the right to criticize the government, and the government authorities must have thick skins. They should not mind criticism. In a democracy, people have a right to criticize them. So that's a very important judgment the Madras High Court gave. Now, I have given many examples in my article in the Wire.in, which I have referred to just now. For example, Safura Zarda, that pregnant Kashmiri young woman, she was put in jail really because she protested against the Citizenship Amendment Act. Now, protesting against a law is no crime. How can you put a person in jail for that reason? Hello, can you see me?
Sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
See, but fabricated charges have been made against her that she was inciting riots, inciting violence in this Delhi. These are all trumped up charges. You know, as you know, very often our police manufactures evidence at the behest of their political masters. Unfortunately, the police is not neutral as it should be. They have also been politicized, and they will do whatever their political masters tell them to do. So, Safura Zardar has been put in jail. Kafil Khan, the doctor, he made a speech in Aligarh Muslim University against this Citizenship Amendment Act. He has been put in jail. Sharjeel Imam has been put in jail. So, large number of people who protested against Citizenship Amendment Act, they have been put in jail. See, this is the tendency of the political rulers these days. They have become intolerant. They cannot put up with any criticism, and anybody criticizing the government is endangering himself. It is dangerous now to criticize the government, which is very wrong. It is totally against the judgment of Supreme Court themselves, as far back as in Ramesh Thapar's case. Then a large number of other people have been jailed. For example, Professor Ambikesh Mahapatra of Jadavpur University. He made a cartoon of Mamata Banerjee, and because of that he was put in jail. Asim Trivedi, the cartoonist in Bombay, he put up a cartoon that politicians are largely corrupt, which in fact is true, but for that he was arrested and put in jail. One Tamil folk singer, Koban, had criticized Jayalalitha for corruption in liquor deals. He was arrested and put in jail. Then large number of journalists are being put in jail nowadays. For example, there is a journalist in Manipur called Kishore Chand Wangkhem. He wrote against the Chief Minister of Manipur, Biren Singh. And he was arrested and sedition charge and Unlawful Activities Act charge was imposed on him. For many months, he had to remain in jail. Ultimately, of course, Manipur High Court quashed his detention. Then there's a journalist in UP, Pawan Jaiswal. He only reported that in Mirzapur district, in a primary school, the children are getting only roti and salt as midday meals. For reporting that, sedition charge was imposed on him and he was put in prison. Then that journalist Abhijit Iyer Mitra, he made a satirical tweet on the Konark temple, for which he later apologized also. On that, Supreme Court denied him bail, and this Chief Justice Gogoi, who is a disgrace to the judiciary, he was heading that bench. Then there's a journalist called Dhawai Patel in Gujarat. He runs a portal called Face the Nation. In that portal, he only mentioned that there is a likelihood of the Chief Minister of Gujarat being replaced. For that, he was arrested on sedition charges, put in jail. Now, what is all this nonsense going on? And why is the Supreme Court not doing something? I mean, the Supreme Court should take so much of cognizance of all this.
इंसानियत को शर्मसार करने वाला निर्णय कम से कम दिल्ली को नहीं लेना चाहिए. दिल्ली देश की राजधानी.
Sorry?
Participants, you are requested to please mute your mic. Otherwise, it will create hurdles in this webinar. So please mute your mic.
So, see, Supreme Court should take so much cognizance of this. They should not even wait for a petition to come before them. And they should quash all this, and they should impose heavy fines on the authorities who are making these illegal arrests and imprisonment. I mean, if people criticize the government, that is nothing wrong in a democracy, as long as they don't commit violence or means incite to violence or something like that. So, now, for example, in Kashmir, as you know, after 5th August, after abrogation of Article 370, a lot of Kashmiri political leaders like Farooq Abdullah, Umar Abdullah, Mehbooba Mufti and all were arrested. Many of them are still in detention. And habeas corpus petitions were filed. Now, see, the practice of habeas corpus is that this has priority over all other cases. In England, if a habeas corpus petition comes before a British judge, he sets aside all other files. He pushes all other files away and says that this case has priority because it relates to individual liberty. And within a couple of weeks, he disposes of the case. But regarding those Kashmiri leaders who were under detention, month after month, the habeas corpus petition was adjourned, and many of them are still pending. One or two have become infectious, like Farooq Abdullah, who has been released, but that was also, his detention was not quashed. It is just the government who released. Many of them are still, after 8 or 9 months, they are still lying in detention. And Supreme Court is not deciding the habeas corpus petition. No, what is this? I was also a judge. I would never keep a habeas corpus petition which came before me pending for more than 2 weeks. I would say this has priority over everything else. And I would give, in fact, often only 1 week time to the government to give a reply, sometimes 2 weeks, but never more than 2 weeks. And I would decide it just after expiry of 2 weeks. But Supreme Court is adjourning again and again. You see, unfortunately, the impression which has been created is that the Supreme Court is no longer neutral. For example, in the term of Justice Gogoi, who was a very shameless man, you know all that he did. He practically surrendered to the government, and he has been given a reward of being made a member of parliament. So the Supreme Court has almost surrendered to the political executive. Instead of being neutral and impartial and independent, they have caved in and buckled down before the government, which was very wrong. So then, for example, there are many cases of atrocities against Muslims, lynching of Muslims like Ikhlaq and Pehlu Khan and Tabrez Ansari and so on. Supreme Court should have intervened and imposed very heavy costs. In fact, put those perpetrators of all this into prison for long periods. But unfortunately, Supreme Court is not fulfilling its duty as the guardian of the Constitution and guardian of the civil liberties of the people. Therefore, all these fundamental rights have now only become on paper. They are just a scrap of paper, meaningless. So this is my opinion. Now you can put me any questions.
Thank you, sir. Sir, we will start with a question and answer session. Participants, you can ask question in the chat box. Please start asking the questions. So there is
one other example I would like to give you, that is of the Bhima Koregaon accused.
Yes, sir.
These are also, all trumped up charges, fabricated charges. These people have been, that lady, what was her name? Some Shobha Swaraj or something. Sudha Bharadwaj.
Sudha Bharadwaj.
So many, I mean, all on trumped up and fabricated charges. Here, unfortunately, the police will fabricate. They are not fair and impartial as police is expected to be. Very often, they will fabricate evidence at the behest of the political masters. So, but here the judiciary should have intervened. In fact, I had written an article that Supreme Court should apply the Brandenburg test. You see, in USA, as you know, Justice Holmes had laid down the clear and present danger test in Schenck versus United States. Those of you who have studied constitutional law would know that. That was known as the clear and present danger test. But that was even made more clear in the case of Brandenburg versus Ohio, a decision of the US Supreme Court, which still holds the field today, although it was delivered in 1969. Brandenburg versus Ohio. That is the law of the United States even today, in which the US Supreme Court said that freedom of speech and freedom cannot be restricted unless there is apprehension of imminent lawless action. Imminent means immediate, something, some activity or speech which will incite to immediate lawless action. Then only it can be prohibited, not otherwise. So when I was a judge of the Supreme Court in 2 decisions, I followed that judgment of US Supreme Court in Brandenburg versus Ohio. One was in my judgment along with Justice Gyan Sudha Misra in the case of Arup Bhuiyan versus State of Assam, and the other was in the case of Sri Indra Das versus State of Assam, where we followed that Brandenburg test. Now, those were decisions given by 2 judge benches. So I would like the Constitution bench of the Indian Supreme Court to approve of that Brandenburg test. See, for example, take for example the demand for Azadi. So many people demand Azadi, Kashmiris and these Khalistanis, some Nagas. That demand is nothing illegal. It's not a crime. You may not approve of it, but it's not a crime. It's part of freedom of speech. It becomes a crime if you go further, if you commit violence, or you start organizing violence, or if you incite to imminent lawless violence. Not otherwise. Otherwise, you see, so many people, Kashmiris, every day demanding Azadi. Let them do it. This is part of freedom of speech. So, it's time the Indian Supreme Court, by an authoritative decision of a constitution bench, upholds the Brandenburg test and quashes all these prosecutions, like in Bhima Koregaon, or that Professor Sai, what is his name? Sainath of Delhi University. He has been also, they did not do anything which would incite to imminent lawless action. So all those prosecutions should be quashed. But when the case came before the Indian Supreme Court regarding Bhima Koregaon incident, they only went on the question of whether the investigation should be done by the Maharashtra police or by the CBI. They were limited only to that aspect. But they never went on into this more fundamental question that whether even if the charges against the Bhima Koregaon accused are correct, whether whether they stand the test of the Brandenburg decision. which the Indian Supreme Court has followed in 2 decisions. That should have been, they should have gone, but nobody went in, even the lawyers did not argue. See, unfortunately, these lawyers also don't know all this. They have never heard of Brandenburg versus Ohio. How many you people, I think some of you are law students.
Yes, sir. Many of us are law students. We are
Law student, but you don't know law. Wonderful law student. Have you heard of Brandenburg versus Ohio?
Yeah,
I think even your professors have not heard of it. Senior lawyers of Supreme Court have not heard of it. You make money and for knowing very little law. This is a misfortune. And Indian Supreme Court, you know, they should now really act as the guardian of the rights of the Indian people. Otherwise, the freedom of people are being trampled upon with impunity. Nobody is bothered, judiciary not bothered, like Bhish Pitama, who closed his eyes when Draupadi was being disrobed. You know that incident in the Mahabharata.
Yes.
So Indian Supreme Court has also closed its eyes. These judges have taken an oath to uphold the constitution, but they are not upholding the constitution. They are violating their oath.
Yes.
They are being paid salaries from the taxes. We are paying their salaries, that out of the taxes we pay, they are getting salaries. So in return, they should at least do their duty. But Supreme Court and High Court judges, I'm sorry to say, most of them are not doing their duty.
Yes, sir. Sir, there's one question. So what is the role of a law student? Because current scenario, the court seems quite biased towards the government, and if a law student has some idea which is against the government, it creates a fear. So there's one question: what should we as a law student can do, seeing the condition and circumstances in this country?
See, you law students, I don't think you can do much, but the lawyers in the Supreme Court and High Court, they should now file a comprehensive petition before the Supreme Court, in which all these instances which I mentioned in my article, there are 2 articles in the Wired.in. One is called the Supreme Court must resume its role of protector of the liberties of the citizen. And the other article is called All the Time the Supreme Court Turned a Nelson's Eye to Injustice. These 2 articles you will find in the portal, the Wired.in. So dozens of examples are given there. All these should be put in a comprehensive petition, which should be filed before the Supreme Court, and some senior counsel should be engaged, and the lawyer should tell the judges, look, you have to do your duty now. Enough is enough. Indian people have certain expectations of the Supreme Court. What is this you are sleeping? You just shutting your eyes to what all illegalities and excesses and arbitrariness is being committed. Even the slightest criticism of government is dangerous. Yes, you may be arrested, and then all kinds of fabricated evidence will be put up against you, and you will be detained either on sedition charges or Unlawful Activities Prevention Act or NSA. All this nonsense will be done. Yes. This is all unconstitutional. I mean, where is then Article 21, right to liberty? It has vanished. Supreme Court, you know, the government is doing all this with impunity just because the courts will not interfere.
Yes. Sir, there is one question from Anshuman, first year student. He asked, well, sir, what is your opinion on the abrupt change of Gujarat High Court bench? Because there was one judge who criticized the Gujarat government condition of the medical condition over there, and thereafter they changed the bench abruptly. So what is your opinion on that?
That was very wrong. That bench should not have been changed in this manner. Just like, for example, Justice Muralidhar of Delhi High Court.
Yes, sir.
He criticized the Delhi police because of the acts in Northeast Delhi. There were riots, attacks on Muslims and all, so he had criticized the police. Overnight, he was transferred to Punjab High Court.
Yes, sir.
And that was done at the instance of the Supreme Court. After all, but evidently that means Supreme Court is doing obeying the orders of the government and not acting independently as it should.
Yes, sir.
So this is very wrong. These people have taken an oath to uphold the constitution. They are totally violating their oath.
Yes, sir. Sir, there is Ms. Gargi who asked, according to you, what amounts to sedition? whether the GNU incident of Bharat ke Tukde Tukde is something like this, whether it amounts to sedition or not.
No, I told you it will amount to sedition only if it leads to imminent lawless action.
Yes, sir.
According to the Brandenburg test.
Yes, sir.
See, in America, in 1969, the decision was given, Brandenburg versus Ohio. Please read that judgment.
Sure.
And that is still the law of the land in USA.
Yes, sir.
It has not been changed, not been altered after 1969. In that judgment, Brandenburg versus Ohio, the US Supreme Court said that it is only when some act or speech leads to imminent law. Imminent means immediate.
Yes, sir.
If it is likely to immediately provoke violence, then only it can be prohibited.
Yes.
Not in a remote period. For example, Marxism. Marxism says that socialism can be brought by violent revolution. But there are so many Marxists. In fact, there's a party, CPI, CPM, which claim to be Marxist party. But can you put them all in jail because they profess to be Marxists? But see, that is only sometime in the future. It is not that they are inciting to revolution today. And there are so many professors who are Marxists in universities. That does not make them criminals. So this Brandenburg versus Ohio test should be applied, and the judgment in Kiranath Singh's case, Kiranath was the state of Bihar, you know, the constitution, that should be reconsidered, and it should be further narrowed down. The sedition law was actually made by the British. It should frankly be declared unconstitutional. It was made by the British to keep the Indian people under subjugation. However, even if you want to still uphold it, you have to confine it to very narrow limits, and therefore it should be subject to the Brandenburg test.
Yes.
Only if the speech may lead to imminent lawless action, then only it becomes criminal.
So there is one question from Prakhar Suru, first year student, that he is asking whether Indian judiciary is maintaining the spirit of constitutionalism, whether they are, as constitutionalism speaks about check and balances. So whether Indian judiciary is maintaining that spirit of constitutionalism.
No, Indian judiciary, no, it should be doing it, but it is not doing it.
Okay.
You see, there is balance of power and separation of powers in the constitution.
Yes.
3 organs of the state are each supposed to act within their own domain. But the judiciary has practically become servants of the executive, which is very wrong.
Yes, sir.
Judiciary was meant to be independent and neutral and fair and impartial, not become chamchas of the government.
Yes, sir.
See, what did Justice Arun Mishra do? There was a very senior judge of Indian Supreme Court. In a public meeting, he praised the Prime Minister and saying he's a visionary and he's a genius and whatnot. In a public meeting.
Yes, sir.
Is this the way Supreme Court judges should behave? I mean, almost like a servant he spoke. Justice Arun Mishra.
Yes.
But what message is sent to the people? That these judges are nothing but servants of the government.
So, what do you feel is the aggravating factor for Supreme Court giving the pressure from this political executive? What is this aggravating factor? Because we heard Supreme Court in 2011-2012 taking a strong remark against government, like calling CBI as a caged parrot and all. So, what is this imminent and aggravating factor for this Supreme Court?
No, I'm not able to understand your question. What are you trying to say?
Sir, like
please speak slowly and please speak clearly.
Sure, sir. So, like Supreme Court in 2010, 2011, 2012, we have heard during the Anna movement, which they took the 2G case very seriously. They took coal scam case very seriously. But now they are just under some kind of political pressure. So, what do you think? What is the aggravating factor behind this?
See, I told you that these present judges, I'm not saying every one of them, but most of them.
Yes, sir.
They are not doing their duty of upholding the constitution and acting as guardians of the liberties of the people, which they should. They have taken an oath for that. They are violating their oath.
Yes, sir.
So this is very unfortunate. Some, some are given temptation, like Gogoi, that rascal. He became Chief Justice of India, but he's a rascal, shameless, sexual pervert, and whatnot. And he obeyed the orders of the BJP government. He has been given the post of Member of Parliament, a reward. So many of them look after post-retirement rewards. So they want to keep the government happy. And this is what happens. In fact, you must be remembering, again, Deepak Mishra, who was CGI, there was an open press conference of 4 senior judges.
Yes, sir.
And they protested because what he was doing is he was giving very sensitive and very important cases to junior judges.
Yes, sir.
And not allocating to senior judges like Justice Chalmeshwar, who were known to be very independent. He was allocating it to judges who were known to be pro-BJP, like this Arun Mishra and Rajesh Agarwal and all. They were known to be very pro-BJP. He was allocating important cases to them and not to senior judges. So these 4 senior judges held an open press conference. This was unprecedented in the history of the Indian judiciary.
Yes, sir.
The 4 senior most judges of the Supreme Court holding an open revolt against Deepak. Deepak Mishra was another shameless man, the way he behaved.
So next question is by Ms. Gargi. She is asking, what is your opinion about denial of bail of a pregnant woman recently, because she was charged under the suspicion of UPA Act. So she denied bail by the...
Who has been denied bail?
A pregnant woman, Miss Jarger, under CA.
I'm telling you, the charges against that Safura Zardar are all fabricated charges. It is really because she was very active against the Citizens Amendment Act that she has been charged for inciting violence, inciting communal riots and all that. And the law of bail was laid down by Justice Krishna Iyer in state of Rajasthan versus Balchand. You may read the judgment. That is the basic judgment about bail, which says that bail, not jail, is the normal rule. It is only if the crime is very heinous, like murder or rape or something, or if the accused is likely to abscond, or he is likely to tamper with the evidence, intimidate the witnesses, something like that. Otherwise, bail is the normal rule.
Yes, sir.
But that is not being followed. See, just in the case of, for example, Abhijit Iyer Mitra,
Yes, sir.
he had only made a satirical tweet about the Konarak temple. And for that also he immediately apologized. And yet when his bail application came before the Supreme Court presided by Justice Gogoi, then Justice Gogoi said, the safest place for you is in jail. Now, should the Supreme Court judges talk like this? In this flippant and cruel manner? But this is how Gogoi, that rascal, behaved.
Yes. Sir, next question is from Miss Ashima. She is asking, hello sir, we have seen High Court judges being more liberal and imperative in tackling the plight related to liberties of the people, but not the Honorable Supreme Court. Do you agree with this opinion, sir?
Yes, that is right. In fact, this is what happened during emergency also, when High Court judges were quashing the arrests of many leaders who were against whom frivolous allegations were made. But Supreme Court, in the case of ADM Jabalpur,
Yes.
said that citizens have no right to life or liberty. That was also a shameless judgment in 1975, and that judgment was really given. You see, that bench was, I think, was presided over by A.N. Ray, who was a chamcha of the government.
Sir.
Then M.H. Beg was another chamcha. Then these 2 judges, Justice Chanchud, father of Dhananjay Chanchud, Justice Chanchud and Justice Bhagwati.
Yes.
These 2 people had a rivalry. Both wanted to become next Chief Justice of India, because Bhagwati was appointed as High Court judge earlier than Chanchud. Bhagwati was appointed in Gujarat High Court as High Court judge, and Chanchud was appointed in Bombay High Court. But Bhagwati had been appointed earlier to Chanchud, so he was senior as a High Court judge. But on elevation, Chanchud was brought in earlier. So Bhagwati had that grievance that he was deprived of a long term as CGI. He got only a very short term of 1 year or so, whereas Chanchud got 8 years or something. So there was rivalry between the two, and both wanted to please Indira Gandhi. This was shameful behavior on the part of Justice Chandrachud and Justice Bhagwati. This judgment of ADM Jabalpur was a shameless judgment. But because they were careerists, they wanted to become Chief Justice of India earlier. Therefore, they gave this judgment. Only brave man was H.R. Khanna. Only brave man who said no, even in emergency, citizens have right to life and liberty.
Yes.
But similar thing is happening now. Just in an emergency, the Supreme Court has surrendered before the executive. Same thing is happening nowadays.
Sir, next question is from Ms. Sadia. She is asking about how strict Supreme Court should deal with these hate speeches, like hate speeches given by these government ruling part, current ruling members of party members. So how Supreme Court or a constitutional authorities like Election Commission should deal with these hate speeches?
No, deal with what cases?
Hate speeches, sir. Hate speeches.
Hate speeches, yes, of course. A very strong punishment should be given for hate speeches.
Yes, sir.
This is a serious offense. You see, India is a country of great diversity. There are so many religions, so many castes, so many languages, so many ethnic groups and so on. So the only way to hold India together is by mutual respect, by tolerance. Everybody, all religions should be treated equally. So those who spread hatred must be given severe punishment.
Yes, sir.
But see, the government will thrives on communal hatred. BJP thrives on communal hatred. The whole politics is based on that. And the judiciary has surrendered before the government. So it's a very unfortunate state of affairs.
Yes, sir. Sir,
Kapil Mishra, who has joined BJP,
yes.
he said, and that Anurag Thakur, who is a minister, said, Desh ke gaddaron ko, and the crowd shouted, Goli maro salon ko.
Yes,
Is that not incitement to hatred, other incitement to violence? Anurag Thakur should have been immediately arrested and put in jail and given heavy punishment of 10-20 years imprisonment, inciting murder. But nothing has been done. He remains a minister. So this is a very sad state of affairs. What can I say?
Sir, Anuj is asking, what is the role of this media? Because now media is totally seems biased to us towards the current government. So what is the role of this media?
Listen, historically, the media arose in the 18th century in Western Europe as an organ of the people against feudal oppression. At that time, in the 18th century, in Europe.
So your video seems off.
The feudal authorities.
Yes.
Therefore, the people had to create new organs which could serve their interests. And the media was one of the powerful organs which the people created to serve their interests. The media in the 18th century was not in the, there was no TV also, there was only print media. And print media also not in the form of regular newspapers, but as pamphlets and leaflets and booklets and so on. These were used by great writers like Voltaire and Rousseau and all, who attacked feudalism and religious bigotry and so on. But today what we are seeing is that instead of representing the interests of the people, the media has practically become a servant of the ruling party. Large majority section. Leave aside some brave journalists who are maintaining their independence. Otherwise, they have all become servants of the ruling party. You see in the TV channels how shamelessly they spread communal hatred. And newspapers also, they have all surrendered, because the media owners, they are businessmen and they don't want to annoy the government. They want to please the government. They will do whatever the government will tell them. Otherwise, they are afraid the government take action against them, send them income tax notice or some other kind of notice and this and that. So they don't want to, they will do whatever they are told by the government.
Sir.
Media, unfortunately, in India, is not serving the interests of the people, which was its duty. Its duty was to serve the people, but it is not doing so. Except there are some exceptions, of course, but 90% of them, media has become shameless. Just as a large part of the judiciary has become shameless, so also the media.
Sir, so how can we deal that? Because now media is biased, judiciary is biased, and they are taking part of government. And so how can we deal? How can we curb those things?
As I told you that a comprehensive petition should be filed in the Supreme Court. All of you should join, thousands of people should join in the petition and engage some senior lawyers and mention in detail in that petition how the civil liberties of the people are being violated. So this
Hello.
The Supreme Court should be requested to lay down the Brandenburg test in a constitutional bench judgment, because that will become authoritative. My two judgments were only two-member bench judgments, but it should be approved by a constitutional bench. And this is what you people can do. All of you can join together, engage some senior lawyers, and hold a press conference and big meeting in Delhi or Bombay or somewhere, and then file this petition before Supreme Court and tell the Supreme Court that you have to do your duty. There are dozens of cases decided by Supreme Court themselves. Latest one of Navtej Singh Johar versus Union of India, and this other Shakti Vahini versus Union of India of 2018. Constitution bench judgments in which Supreme Court itself has said that when there is a right, the judiciary cannot remain a mute spectator, but must enforce the rights. But they have forgotten their own judgment so quickly. So you people should join together and file a comprehensive petition before Supreme Court and tell Supreme Court to approve the Brandenburg test by a constitution bench as early as possible.
Sir, there's one question from Ms. Kamna, first year student. What is your view regarding recent time there is a rise in Islamophobia in our country? Islamophobia, that is hatred against the Muslims. A lot of common people are suffering because of it. Even the judges are suffering from it. That the judges who belong to a Muslim religion is not elevated to as a chief justice of some high court or like this. So, what is your opinion about this Islamophobia?
This is very wrong. You see, as I told you, India is a country of great diversity. Is by giving equal respect to everybody. Otherwise, it cannot survive for one day. See, what is there common between you and that boy from Nagaland? You are a Hindu or Muslim, he is a Christian. You are living in the plains, he is living in the hills. His language is different, food habits are different, everything is different. So unless you give him equal respect, why should he remain within India if you don't respect him? Some people, some BJP people said that a law against cow slaughter should be made by Parliament, which means it should be made for the whole of India.
Yes, sir.
And I said, look, if you make this law, let me check. Just now it is only made by some state, most of the state, but not all states. If you make it a national law, immediately Nagaland and Mizoram will secede from India because they are beef eaters. They say this beef is cheap protein for us and we will eat it. So if you compel them to leave beef, they will say, all right, we are leaving India. Immediately there will be a revolt. You can't do that. You have to, see, this is where I have again and again said that the real father of the Indian nation was the great Emperor Akbar.
Yes.
He is the real father of the Indian nation because he gave equal respect to all religions. Hindus held highest posts like Raja Man Singh, Birbal, Todarmal and all, and he gave respect to Christians and Parsis and Sikhs. Everybody he treated equally. And that is why the Mughal Empire lasted so long, because it was an inclusive empire. It took everybody together with it. So we have to follow the path of the great Emperor Akbar. In fact, I have set up an organization called Ibadat Khana. You can have a look at it. I set it up in America, and we are still following it up. You can see my posts on Ibadat. It goes with against the very fabric of India. It's a country of tremendous diversity. See, let me tell you one thing. India and China have almost the same population, about 130 crores or so. But China has broad homogeneity, not absolute homogeneity, but broad homogeneity, in the sense that 90-95% Chinese belong to one ethnic group called the Hans. Common written script called Mandarin. Of course, Mandarin is a spoken language also, but there are other spoken languages like Cantonese and so. And almost all Chinese have a Mongoloid face. They are racially the same. So there's broad homogeneity in China, whereas India has tremendous diversity. That is the great contrast between India and China. China has one common written script called Mandarin. India has dozens of written scripts, apart from hundreds of languages and sub-languages. So we must give equal respect to everybody. Otherwise, this country cannot hold together for one day. There's so much diversity. So this Islamophobia, there are 22 crore Muslims in India, if not more. You can't send them all to gas chambers. What is this lynching of Muslims? Pehlu Khan, Ikhlaq, Tabriz, Ansari. We have been disgraced before the whole world. Whole world looks down on us that the people are barbarians, the way they have behaved, lynching people. So this must be treated as a serious crime, and harsh punishment should be given to those who spread hatred on religious lines.
Yes, sir. One of your Twitter follower has asked that you commented on NRC and CAA like there is a conversion and reconversion of the new citizens. In Twitter
Conversion
account,
of what?
Conversion and reconversion of the new citizens.
Which city?
In one of your Twitter comments, you have said upon NRC and CAA that there must be conversion and reconversion of the new citizen. So what is your opinion on that?
No, what is the meaning of conversion and new conversion of cities?
Of the new citizens.
Citizens?
Yes, sir.
Conversion and
see,
these are all gimmicks. These are all vote catching. You are talking of the CAA.
Yes,
citizenship. And see, I'm telling you, you must get your concepts clear. Actually, you people, most of you, I mean, including your professor and all, you don't have your concepts clear. Or let me make your mind clear. See, the test of every political activity or political system is one and only one. And that is, does it raise the standard of living of the people? Does it give people better lives? This is the one and only test. Now, unfortunately, today's government, you know, they cannot solve the economic problems. There's massive poverty, massive unemployment. You see, poverty is destructive of all rights. If you are poor, unemployed, hungry, what is the meaning of freedom of speech for you? Or liberty, or all these fundamental rights? They mean nothing. So now we have to understand this. Now, government is unable to find any way of solving the economic problems, which are poverty, unemployment, and so on. And in fact, it is growing, and it is the economy was in India was sinking, tanking. Now this lockdown has further pushed it downwards, and there's record unemployment, and it is growing unemployment. So they don't know what to do about it. Therefore, they must resort to gimmicks, stunts like the CAA is another stunt. Like Yoga Day or Article 370 abolition. All these are gimmicks. They mean nothing. They have no effect on the rights of the on the lives of the people. These are all gimmicks, vote catching gimmicks.
Yes.
The whole game is how we can get more votes.
Yes.
This is the only purpose of all this. I regard all these as stunts and gimmicks.
Yes, sir. Sir, what are your opinion regarding Supreme Court judgment on Sabrimala case, right to religion?
See, about Sabrimala also I have written an article.
Yes, sir.
See, all these women activists are raising huge and cry that in Sabrimala, women, menstruating women are not allowed to go.
Yes.
And, you know, I've been to Sabrimala many times. Personally, I'm an atheist. I believe all religions are superstitions and the truth lies in science. However, that is only my personal belief.
Yes.
Most people, like over 90% people in this country, are highly religious. And we have to respect that. They have the right to have their religion. I don't agree with that. I'm a scientific person, but they have the right to follow their religion. Now, it is the belief of these Ayappans, the devotees of Sabrimala. I don't know whether you've seen them. In South India, if you go to South Indian cities, you will see these people wearing black clothes.
Yes, sir.
And for 40 days before a particular date, they wear black clothes and they restrict their food and they don't have sex and so on. So they are known as Ayappans. And they believe that Lord Ayappa, who is the presiding deity of Sabrimala, is a bachelor. He does not like menstruating women in his presence. Now, this is their belief. You see, in religion, you must not ask the rationale.
Yes.
Religion is not based on reason. It is believed in faith. People just believe it. See, for example, there is a shrine in Srinagar called Hazrat Bal Shrine. Now, it is said that there is a hair of the Prophet kept there. Hair of the Prophet Muhammad. Now, you cannot ask the question that what is the proof that this is the hair of the Prophet? You can't ask that question. The only question you can ask is, do people who go there believe that it is the hair of the Prophet? And the answer is yes, they believe it. That's the end of the matter. There are so many, in Chitrakoot, in UP, there is one Sita Rasoi, where it is said Lord Sita ji used to cook food for Lord Ram when he was exiled. Now, you can't ask question that whether Sita existed and what is the proof that she used to cook there. This is a matter of faith. Similarly, it is a matter of faith that these Ayappans believe that Lord Ayappa is a bachelor and he does not like menstruating women in his presence. That's the end of the matter. So I agree with the judgment of Justice Indu Malhotra, who was the only dissenting judge. And she rightly said, in my opinion, that this is a matter of religion. Court should not interfere in religious matters. Unless it is something so abhorrent like sati or something, murderous practices or something very, very abhorrent. Otherwise, this practice is going on for centuries, that menstruating women are not allowed. Why interfere with it? There are many temples where women are not allowed. In UP, see, I belong to UP, although I'm a Kashmiri Pandit, but I've lived mostly in UP. There's a district called Hamirpur.
Yes, sir.
In Hamirpur, there is a Hindu temple which does not permit women to enter. Now, once one lady BJP MLA of UP went there. At that time, the priest was not there. And the lady MLA went inside and prayed and came away. When this came to the knowledge of the people of that area and that priest, they were furious. And the priest said, had I been there, I would never have allowed her. And then that idol was sent for immersion and purification to the Sangam in Allahabad to purify. So what I mean to say, there are different temples having different practices, different customs and all. You should not interfere with all that. And unnecessarily, you will have religious riots. In mosques in India, in 95% mosques, I'm not saying 100%, 95% mosques, they don't permit women. Women have to pray at home. 95%, I can tell you. There are 5% in Kerala and all where they permit women, but they otherwise. Now, according to the same logic which was given by the Supreme Court in the Sabrimala verdict, that is also an illegal practice in the mosques to deny entry to women. Theoretically, Islam does not ban women from entering mosques, but that is only the theory. In India, the practice is that in 95% mosques, women are not allowed. They may be allowed in Makkah, Medina, but not in Indian mosques.
Yes.
Only in 5% in Kerala and all they permit. Yes, in some, I believe they have started in Jama Masjid, Delhi, a separate enclosure, but that also very limited amount. Otherwise, Muslim women all pray at home. They say their namaz at home. No, you see the scenes of Muslims praying on Eid and all. They are sitting in rows and standing in rows. You won't find any Muslim, any woman there. Then Supreme Court should also give the verdict that women must also be allowed in mosque. But if you do it, there may be riots, communal riots. You must understand this.
So next question is about the appointment of judges in this collegium system. Like
I can't hear you. I can't hear you. You have to speak
hello?
louder if you want me to hear you.
Hello?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Sir, next question is about this appointment of judges in the Supreme Court and High Court, like in this collegium system. So, do you consider this collegium system as a transparent system, or NJAC system was more transparent?
Now let me answer you. Every institution is the human personnel who are manning that institution, whether it is judiciary or parliament or any bureaucracy. They must be first-class people. Now, supposing you have a high court which has beautiful building and beautiful carpets and beautiful lawns, but the judges inside that are taking bribes, then it is no high court. I say that if there's a tree and under the tree a judge is sitting who is upright and dispensing high quality justice, that tree is a high court. So it is not the superficial thing. See, whether it is collegium system of appointing judges or whether there is this National Judicial Commission which was sought to be set up, because that was quashed, or any other system. In my opinion, this is not material. The point is what kind of judges are appointed through that system. You can have good judges by National Judicial Commission, you can have good judges by collegium system or any system. And you can have bad judges also. How did Gogoi get appointed? This man who has disgraced the whole judiciary. He was, after all, selected by the collegium, both in High Court and Supreme Court. But earlier, before the collegium system came into existence, I think it came into existence in 1991 or something.
Yes, sir.
The second judge's case. Before that also, there were a lot of judges who were corrupt. So it does not matter what system here. The point is what kind of judges are produced by that system. Are they first-class people? This is the relevant thing.
So next question is from Mr. Shashwat Sharma. He's a passing out. He's a fifth-year student of NMIMS in Mumbai campus. He is asking about the constitutional validity of these NSA Act, National Security Act, and IT Act, and these acts which are oftenly used as to press the revolt and dissent voices.
See, I have already answered you that these laws should be confined to very narrow limits, particularly preventive detention laws, because there is no trial. So the Brandenburg test should be applied, that it is only if the activity or speech incites to imminent lawless action that a person can be arrested. Otherwise, all these arrests should be quashed. Like the arrest of Bhima Koregaon accused, or Professor Sainath, or so many other people. Their speeches or articles would not lead to imminent lawless action. You may not agree with them, but it did not create any possibility of imminent lawless action, immediate lawless action. So all that those prosecutions should be quashed.
So next question is from Ms. Rishika. Actually, it's a suggestion, more sort of suggestion, that the real responsibility lies with the citizens of India. If they are not aware about their rights, the constitutional institution can do nothing. So, do you agree with this statement?
No, I did not follow what you are saying.
Sir, as Rishika, first year student, is saying that we follow democracy, people are supreme and all, but people and citizens are not aware about of their rights. So we must aware them about their rights. Then we can hold this constitutional institution responsible for them.
See, this is where your lawyers come in.
Yes, sir.
This is the duty of you, legal fraternity, to guide the people, tell them about their rights. This is your duty. So it is high time that the lawyers also start educating the public about their rights. But for that, first of all, you have to get those rights firmly established.
Yes, sir.
Just now, they don't, they exist only on paper, as I have been telling you just now,
Yes, sir.
because the judiciary has largely abandoned its role of protector of the rights of the people. So you must again compel the judiciary to resume its role. And that is where you people, you lawyers come in.
Yes, sir.
It is for you people to do this.
Yes, sir. So next question is from.
You have to speak louder. I can't hear
Okay,
you unless
okay,
you
sir.
speak louder.
Hello, sir.
Yes, now I can. Please speak like this. Otherwise, I can't hear you.
Sure, sir. Sure, sir. I will speak like this, sir. So next question is about the diversity of the bench or the Supreme Court judges. Like, do you think that diversity affect the kinds of decision which are being delivered? Like we have seen the judges from South India, which are delivered some sort of good judges for good judgments. So whether diversity affect the judgment or the judge or the mentality of the Supreme Court?
See, all judges are not alike.
Yes, sir.
There are different judges have different approaches. But when a judge sits on the court, he must give up his personal opinions, and he must uphold the constitutional values.
Yes, sir.
Unfortunately, many judges do not do that. I'll give you one example. There is one Justice Anil Dave. He
Yes,
was
sir.
junior to me. He was a judge of Supreme Court, but junior to me. Once he said publicly that Bhagavad Gita should be made compulsory in all schools in India. I had retired by that time.
Yes, sir.
But I immediately wrote an article that this is wrong. It is unacceptable in a secular country. How can you compel a religious book and make it compulsory in all schools?
Yes, sir.
You cannot. Otherwise, why should Quran not be made compulsory in all schools, or Bible should be made compulsory in all schools? This is wrong. You can't. If you are to be a secular country, then you must not make any religious books compulsory in a school. And you have taken an oath to uphold the Constitution.
Yes,
As
sir.
a Supreme Court Judge Justice Anil Dave had taken an oath. Where is that oath gone? When you want a religious book to be thrust on people, many Muslims may not want their children to be taught Bhagavad Gita. You can't compel. Of course, if they willingly read it, that's their choice. But
Yes,
you can't compel them.
Yes, sir. Sir, what next question is from the first year students that what is your opinion about this on the merits of this Ayodhya verdict? Because though you have mentioned in your article itself that Ayodhya verdict has somehow created is not right, but what is your opinion on the merits of the judgment?
It was a shameless verdict. Again, it is as black a verdict as the ADM Jabalpur verdict. At least in ADM Jabalpur case, there was one brave dissent by Justice H.R. Khanna. Here, all the 5 judges shamelessly gave that judgment which upheld illegality. I have mentioned in detail about that verdict, my views, in my article in the Wired.in.
Yes, sir.
Called All the Times the Supreme Court Turned a Nelson's Eye to Injustice.
Yes, sir.
Please read in that article about my views. It was a shameless verdict, as disgraceful a verdict as the ADM Jabalpur verdict.
Yes, sir. Sir, next question is from Mr. Harshit. He is asking, what is your view upon this reservation system of for lower caste?
I am totally against reservation on caste basis. In my opinion, it is nothing but vote catching stunt.
Yes, sir.
It is not. In fact, I'll tell you a very interesting thing. I was invited to Jalandhar
Yes,
by one Ambedkar society. It is a society of Dalits. They telephoned me from Jalandhar. I
Yes,
said,
sir.
I will come only on one condition, that I will be permitted to speak what I want to say. And I'm going to say that reservation is greatly harming the Dalits.
Yes, sir.
Dalits must start demanding that we want an end to reservation.
Yes, sir.
This is all right. Then I went there. There was a huge crowd of thousands of people, 90% or 95% of them being Dalits. I said, you people have been befooled by the reservation. Firstly, how many Dalits get the benefit of reservation?
Yes, sir.
There are maybe 30 crore Dalits in India, or maybe more. and there are hardly 2 or 3 lakh jobs reserved for Dalits. So hardly 0.1 or 0.01% Dalits get the benefit of reservation. But they have been given an impression that all Dalits will get benefit of reservation. But how many jobs are there? There's so few jobs. How many will get jobs? Secondly, I said that, look, you have been put on crutches by this reservation. The politicians want to ensure that you never stand up on your own feet like a man. You will be compelled to remain on crutches.
Yes, sir.
As long as this reservation remains. You see, you have to say, the Dalits must say that, look, we will compete on open merit with the upper caste or OBC, and we will show that we are not intellectually inferior to upper caste and OBCs. Dalits must start demanding end of reservation. It is doing great harm to them. It is befooling them.
Yes, sir.
They think that they are getting a lot. See, a handful of Dalits get benefit, and that also the creamy layer, that means sons of ministers or sons of district magistrate. Otherwise, the poor Dalit will get no benefit. But
Yes.
all of them have been befooled by this reservation. I am against all caste-based reservation, but yet special benefits and facilities should be given to poor children. For example, supposing there is a poor child of poor parents, and his parents don't have the money to buy the school textbooks for him. Then he should be supplied free textbooks by the state, so that to ensure a level playing field with children of rich parents. See, that special facility should be given to poor people of any caste, not just Dalits. Even Brahmin, they may be poor. Even Rajput, they may be poor. He should also be given special facilities so that he gets a level playing field with those children who are from rich families. That benefit of facility should be given. But I'm against all caste-based reservation. It is just political stunt to get votes in elections, nothing else.
Sir, we talk a lot about high courts and supreme courts. What is
Sorry?
your sir? We
I
talk.
can't hear, unless you speak
Hello?
loudly, I will not be able to hear you. I'm sorry. Repeatedly, you are doing the same thing.
Okay, sir. Sorry, sir. So sorry, sir. Sir, my voice is clear, sir?
Yes, now you are clear. But you may keep it clear, please.
Okay, sure,
If
sir.
you remove it every time, I can't hear you.
Sorry, sir. Sir, one person is asking that we always talk about Supreme Court and High Court and how they must perform. What is your opinion on this lower judiciary and the corruption in lower judiciary?
See, corruption is also there in lower judiciary, but because lower judiciary is under the subordination of the higher judiciary, they are not that important in India. Although the bulk of the cases are in the lower judiciary,
Yes.
but for laying down the principles, it is the higher judiciary which does that.
Yes, sir.
So that they are important, but more for laying down the correct principles, the higher judiciary is more important.
Okay, sir. Sir, one of the last questions now. Sir, what is your opinion about this reopening of public places like religious places in this COVID-19 pandemic situation?
See, I have already written an article that this lockdown was all a mistake by the
Yes.
Prime Minister.
Yes,
There
sir.
should never have been any lockdown. And
Yes.
give me a few minutes time to explain my reasons.
Sure, sir.
Firstly, you must understand, see, this lockdown is a very important decision. Because what does lockdown mean? Lockdown means the whole country is put to a standstill. Whole economy is put to a standstill. Now, this is a very serious decision. It should have been taken by the Prime Minister after wide consultation with experts, scientists, economists, administrators, and others. Then only such an important decision should have been taken. But it seems that Prime Minister wanted to show I am a strong man. 26 inch ka seena hai. I can take strong decision, and in a huff on 24th March at 8:30 p.m. he took this decision, giving only 3.5 hours advance notice to the Indian people because it became effective from midnight.
Yes.
He should have held wide consultation. It was such an important decision, but it seems he did not. And just like the demonetization decision, that was also taken in a huff, and it led to havoc. Demonetization. So this also decision was taken in a haste and a wrong decision. And I'll tell you why I think it was wrong. Firstly, corona, people infected by only 2 or 3% people who are infected by corona, or maybe 4% die of the disease. 96-97% recover. In fact, 50% people who have corona are not even aware that they have corona. Automatically it disappears. It's like common cough and cold. It's not such a serious, I mean, the danger is exaggerated. Of course, it's a matter of concern, but it's not such a danger that you put the whole country to a standstill. Because only 3 or 4% people die of those who are infected. Secondly, I've written an article that many more people die in India of TB and flu and malaria, dengue, diabetes. Some comparative chart should have been made that in this 5-month period of lockdown, or since corona came in from January, how many people died of corona and how many people died of TB and malaria and flu and other diseases. I believe only about 6,500 people in India died of corona. What is 6.5 in a population of 135 crore? You think people live forever? They will die, and many will die of some diseases. There's so many other diseases. So how many died of corona in this 5 months? Hardly 6,000, 6,500. And how many died of TB or malaria, or flu, dengue? Nobody has ever bothered to find out. And my information is 10 or 20 times more people died of those ailments. You see, in USA, which is 1/4 the population of India, we have 135 crore, they have 32, 33 crore. There over 1 lakh people have died. Whereas we have 4 times more population, but only about 6,000 people have died. What does this indicate? This indicates that Indians have relative immunity to corona. We are not as susceptible as Americans. It is not such a big danger. It is totally exaggerated. And just see, you have put the country into a total lockdown. The result is, 80-90% of our workforce consists of these casual labor and daily labor, migrant, people in the informal or unorganized sector of the economy. These people, they work every day, they earn every day and eat every day. Now you have deprived them of their livelihood, and you are saying go back home to your villages, and Supreme Court has in fact said that arrangement should be made for free transport and all that. But the point is, when they get back to their homes, what will they do? They have no work there. You see, you must understand, in 1947, the total population of India, that is United India, which includes the present Pakistan and Bangladesh, was about 40 crores. Today, India alone has about over 130 crores, which means population has increased more than 4 times.
Yes, sir.
And in 1947, only 15% Indians were living in cities, 85% were living in villages. Today, about 35-40% people of India live in cities, and only 60-65% live in villages. Now, this means there has been mass migration from rural areas to urban areas after independence. Mass migration of crores and crores of people.
Yes, sir.
Because these people, they had lost their livelihood in the villages. Since the population had increased 4 times, the land could not bear the load of the increased population. And moreover, machinery had replaced labor to some extent. So they had no livelihood. So they came to cities for a livelihood. Whatever little livelihood they could get. Now you are sending them back to the village. But what will they do there? They have no work there. At least in the cities, they were earning a little bit and sending to their families in the village. Now, when you send them to the village, what will they do? They will become a burden on their own families instead of being a support. So this will lead to crime, large-scale crime, because many of these people will become either beggars or suicide or criminals. There will be food riots, there will be breakdown of law and order. See, without realizing all this has been done, this lockdown and all right, you will face the music after a few months.
Yes, sir, one more question. It is about the Uniform Civil Code. Your opinion about Uniform Civil Code, sir?
Yes, there should be Uniform Civil Code. This personal law is a religious law. It's a sign of backwardness. All modern countries have Uniform Civil Code. I totally agree that all this Sharia and all nonsense should be abolished. There should be one law for everybody. I totally agree.
Okay,
And
sir.
abolition of Sharia will not mean abolition of Islam. See, Hindu law was almost abolished. You remember the old Hindu law was a non-statutory law
Non-statutory
before
laws.
1955-56. It was almost totally abolished by the Hindu Marriage Act of 1955, Hindu Succession Act of 1956, and so on. Old Hindu law was abolished, but thereby Hinduism has not been abolished. Hindus still go to temples,
Yes,
Hindu
sir.
puja and all. So if Sharia is abolished, Islam will not be abolished. Then this is nonsense to say that if Sharia is abolished, Islam will be abolished.
Okay, sir. Sir, what is your opinion about this democracy, and whether democracy at the end majoritarianism will lead to the dictatorship?
I have no faith in democracy. Because see, what is this parliamentary democracy which you have under the constitution? What is the reality? Comes down to that.
Yes, sir.
90% people, when they go to vote in India,
Yes, sir.
I'm not saying 100%, I'm saying 90%. They don't see the merits of the candidate, whether he's a good man, bad man, educated, uneducated, criminal, non-criminal. They just go and vote on the basis of caste and religion.
Yes, sir.
So that is why half your members of parliament are criminals, because nobody bothers to find out whether they are criminals or not. They just see their caste and religion. Now, parliamentary democracy means majority rule.
Yes,
And
sir.
majority consists of people who are full of casteism, communalism. See, the mindset of 90% Indians are very low.
Yes, sir.
What to say of uneducated Indians? What about you people? I'll give you an example. I was invited to Dehradun University
Yes, sir.
to give a talk on the constitution. And there was a huge hall of about 400 seats, and it was all full, and there were some 100 or 200 people even standing. Because I'm a great crowd puller like Amitabh Bachchan. So there was a huge crowd. In the front row, there were these professors sitting. On the second row, associate professor, assistant professors, and behind them, all students, girls, boys, And when I spoke, you can see my speech on YouTube. Just type Justice Kaju Dehradun.
Yes, sir.
And I said that these professors who are sitting in the front row, they have lovely suits, lovely ties. Many have got degrees from Harvard and Yale and London School of Economics and so on. And these beautiful lady professors, wearing lovely sari. Just now I will prove that they have gobar in their heads. I said, I will prove it. I'm talking seriously. I said, ask them just one question. If their daughter wants to marry a Dalit, will they agree? Not one of them will agree. I said, I proved my point. You look down on a section of your own people. Does it not prove that you have gobar in your head? You are casteist. When in 1776, in the American Declaration of Independence,
Yes,
it was said, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
yes,
1776. This is the year 2020. After 224 years, you still say no. Dalits are inferior. And the way they often, if a Dalit boy wants to marry a non-Dalit girl,
sir.
he is inviting a death sentence. Often he is brutally murdered. There have been so many cases. So I said, these professors, they may be having degrees from Harvard and Yale and wearing lovely suits and lovely sarees. They have gobar in their heads. They are casteist. Almost every one of them. I said, I proved my point.
Yes, sir.
Those who are casteist, so therefore, what is democracy? It is ruled by majority, and
Yes, sir.
majority consists of people who are casteist and communal.
Yes, sir.
So I have no faith in democracy. See, parliamentary democracy runs largely on caste and religion in our country, as you know. And casteism and communalism are feudal forces
Yes, sir.
which have to be destroyed if India has to progress. But casteism and communalism is further entrenched by parliamentary democracy because it runs on that basis. So how can the country progress on the basis of parliamentary democracy? You have to have some alternative system which lies outside the constitution.
Yes. Sir, your opinion about this Indian Reunification Association. What is this? Tell us something about this.
Listen, let me tell you one thing.
Yes, sir.
if you go on my website, Indian Reunification Association
Yes, sir.
.weebly.com,
Yes, sir.
you will get all the answers there.
Okay, sir.
See, Pakistan is a fake artificial country. It is no country. It was artificially created by the British on the basis of the two-nation theory, which
Yes,
was
sir.
a fraud. Partition was a historical British swindle. The whole game was that India should not be allowed to emerge as a modern industrial giant, because then it would become a big rival to Western industry. And with our cheap labor, we would undersell them. So their factories would close down. Who would buy their expensive goods? So how to prevent India from emerging as an industrial giant like China? The way to do it is by making Indians fight each other in the name of religion and caste and language and so on. So therefore, we have made this association. It is just planting a seed. I'm not saying India and Pakistan and Bangladesh will get reunited tomorrow. It will take 10, 15, 20 years. But we have planted a seed which is bound to grow up into a tree.
Yes.
After 10, 15 years, then that tree will bear fruit. So we have begun a process. It is going to take time, and gradually people will learn that what we are saying is true.
Yes. Thank you, sir. It looks like we have covered all the question. Now I would request Dr. Biplo, sir. Sir, you had some question. You can ask, sir.
Good evening, Markandeya Kaju, sir. This is Dr. Biplo. Before thank you note, sir, I have one question. Am I audible, sir, to you?
Yes, yes.
Sir, Justice Deepak Gupta said, and I quote, "I see lawyers argue on political and ideological sides and not on law." Now, sir, this statement we can also connect it to Katwa incidents where lawyers went on a rally, and also recently Solicitor General talking about armchair philosopher or doomsday prophets and all. How, sir, lawyer? What change should come in the lawyers also? What is your perception on this, sir?
See, an argument can be both political as well as legal. A political argument can also be legal. The judges can only see the legal aspect. So, if it is pure politics unconnected with law, then the judges should not permit such arguments. But there can be a political-legal argument. What is your constitution? Constitution is a political-legal document, unlike an ordinary statute, which is a purely legal document. Constitution is not a purely legal document. It is a political-legal. So, an argument can also be political-legal. The judges should see the legal aspect and decide accordingly.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Now I would request Dr. Biplo Kumar, sir, to propose a word of thanks. Here it is notable to mention, it is Dr. Biplo who has been actively instrumental in persuading Justice Kaju, sir, to oblige us with this presence among us today. So thank you, Biplo, sir, and please go ahead with the vote of thanks, sir.
Thank you so much, Rajneesh, sir. Respected Markandeya Kaju, sir, I have been reading your articles and views and following you on YouTube since my research days. It was my urge that you should come and speak with my students and School of Law Indore also, and every students from Mumbai campus also. So thank you so much, sir. Thank you for your profound lecture. It was a kind of academic exchange and learning ground for all of us. On behalf of Kirti Mehta School of Law, NIMS University, I would like to extend my gratitude towards you. Thank you once again for your warm gesture and gracious approach towards us. Thank you, sir. And sir, I would also like to extend my warm token of gratitude towards our Dean, sir, Dr. Alok Mishra ji, Director ma'am, Dr. Prachi Gharpure ji, Associate Dean, sir, Dr. Ashutosh Hajela ji, for their constant support and encouragement. And I would also like to all the respected personalities who have participated in this seminar, my colleagues from NIMS in Mumbai, and to all the students, because it was for you, my dear students, and this academic learning should continue. I hope you have learned a lot today. And lastly, thank you, Kaju, sir. We are looking forward for more academic exchanges with you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Yes. Okay, so thank you, everyone. We appreciate you being here. Thanks again for joining us today, and we will see you next time. Thank you so much. Thank you, sir.
Okay, bye.
बिछ गए सियासी विसार, खेला जा रहा है सियासी खेल, जारी है वार पलटवार। शह और मात के खेल में बनाई जा रही है रणनीति, कौन पड़ेगा किस पर भारी। ये कभी भी सिर्फ hastachep.com पर अमलेंदु उपाध्याय के साथ